Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. I'm Dana Pauly with Leadership Montgomery, and we're thrilled to welcome you to this discussion on fraud. You might have heard we are recording today's session, and it will be sent out to you and sent out through our blog in case you would like to share it with anyone else. Today is a very timely topic and discussion, as you all just heard from Jen from AARP, and we want to thank AARP for the continued partnership. We also want to thank Com4Care. Virginia is representing them today for sponsoring this session. There's a lot of really great content, so I want to go ahead and get us started. Our speaker for today is Ted Meyerson. Ted is one of AARP Maryland's most active volunteers, and as a public speaker, AARP, FredWatch network leader, advocate for advanced care planning, a technology trainer, and a legislative advocate. He has devoted much of his volunteer service to bettering the lives of older adults. As a member and vice chair of the Howard County Commission on Aging, chair of the Howard County Senior Property Tax Task Force, chair of the Howard County Commission on Aging Advocacy Committee, the State Empowerment Zones for Senior Commission. He served on the State Committee on Oversight of Nursing Homes and Assisted Living Facilities, was a member of the State Continuing Care Advisory Committee, Howard County Affordable Housing Commission, State Community Options Advisory Committee, Long-Term Care Payment Advisory Committee, and the Howard County Jewish Community Relations Council. A graduate of Carnegie Mellon University, Meyerson operated his own printing company and was an associate real estate broker. His past organizational affiliations include president of the Printing Industry Association, treasurer of the B'nai Israel Congregation in Rockville, and member of their board of governors. He is the past president of the United Seniors of Maryland, founder and president of the Better Aging Foundation of Maryland, a former Howard County Community College adjunct professor, a retired United Coast Guard auxiliary member, and a past chair of the State Advisory Council on Quality Care at the End of Life. Thank you, Ted, for being with us today. I'm going to turn it over to you.
There's no time left this hour. I'm sorry for that. Usually my introduction is, my name is Ted Meyerson. I'm a volunteer for AARP, and I let it go at that.
I just felt that your vast experience and things that you have done were worth noting.
I'm embarrassed by it, but thank you. All right, so let's go to something more significant than me. All right, so you all should be able to see the beginning, the first slide on a PowerPoint presentation. Can you?
Yes.
Okay. The first two slides that I have, I couldn't decide which one to keep, so I kept them both, because what I'm trying to put across is that this is really a problem. In 2020, there were 4.7 million reports of theft, scams, and whatever. And the most prevalent was identity theft. And the median loss was $311, which doesn't sound like a lot of money. In aggregate, with everybody, it was $3.3 billion. But let's hold on to that 311, because after this following slide, I will show you why it's more important. This is in the state of Maryland in 2020. In the state of Maryland, 41,286 fraud reports. Fraud and identity theft, 85,000 plus. So it's not a trivial issue. It's an important issue. And for those of us who qualify for AARP, it's more important, because if you remember the $300 average that people are losing, but if you look up the scale, the older you get, the more it costs you. Why that might be, I would guess, I don't have a real reason, but my guess is that somebody over 80, and I'm over 80, might become more susceptible to people who are scammers. I don't, that's the only reason I can put to it is that on average, that might be the case. Now, I also, before I start getting into the weeds, this is a very sophisticated group, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure that everybody in the group is going to be familiar with some of what I say. But hopefully, not everybody in the group will be familiar with everything I say. And when I was younger and active and I went and heard somebody speak, my goal was to come away with one idea. So if I can prevent somebody from losing something, if I can present to you one new idea, I'll consider this a success. So here we go with that. So here's a definition. Identity theft is a crime in which a thief obtains personal information that enables someone, the thief directly, or he sells the information to somebody else, to impersonate somebody else. Now, there are many kinds of specific thefts. Medical identity theft is a specific. It's a crime in which somebody impersonates someone else in order to get drugs or durable medical equipment or healthcare services. And then the bill comes to you. The Internet of Things identity theft, you don't hear much about that. I always like to try to mention it because it's going to grow and people are going to become more aware of it as time goes by. But we're all building smart homes, and all those smart home connections are through the internet. So if somebody can hack into that, there's a lot of information that they can get. Synthetic identity theft is when someone aggregates information to create a whole new identity. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Child identity theft. Somebody steals a child's social security number and as many pieces of information as they can get, and gets credit cards, mortgage, or whatever in the child's name. And it may not be caught until the child goes to college, tries to get a credit card and finds out its credit's been ruined because it's had 14 credit cards to his or her social security number and got no credit, and it takes forever to get it unwound. So that's a whole different issue. So these are only a few. If you look online and say what kinds of identity theft there are, you'll have a whole bunch, a whole list. So the goal of the thief is always the same. All right. They want to get a name, address, date of birth, social security number, phone number, any personal identifiable information that will enable them to impersonate you. So how do they do that? Well, they get any information they can get. And there's a lot of information out there already. You can try to control access to your social security number, your driver's license, your passport number, your financial account numbers, your banking and PIN numbers, your credit card, their expiration date and security code, and what you put on social media. What you put on social media, you can try to control. Notice I said try. But there are other pieces of information that are out in the public domain, sitting out there. Your legal name, your current and past address, your place of birth, email address, phone number, affiliations, membership, employer, all kinds of things, life cycle announcements, your credit report if you don't freeze it, and we'll talk about that later too. So that stuff is out there. And if you don't think somebody's gotten it, we'll look at that in a moment. But there are other ways to get information also, and we're going to address each of these as we go. Cyber breaches, either corporate or individual. Phishing and smishing. Phishing, we're going to show you specific examples of how you get emails where the thief wants you to click on something to link your computer to their computer or to gain information. Smishing is the same thing using texting. And then there are live calls and robocalls. We call that vishing. Skimming. Put a device in a gas pump or an ATM machine, read your card that you put in, and there's somebody stole your information. And actually stealing. Actually, somebody steals your credit card or your tax return out of the mailbox or any other kind of documents or medical records, just your mail. And then there are enticements where you give people information. Now, a lot of us who haven't been working because of COVID-19 might want to get a part-time job or something. You fill out an application and what you put in there. And there are always these free giveaways, which may be free. But the problem is they're only free for a month. And you've given a credit card and just go ahead and try to cancel it. You have a terrible time trying to cancel it. Call this number. Nobody answers. Call this number. We are exceptionally busy. Call back again. So those free things sometimes don't end up being as free as you might want them to be. So here's what I was saying. Your information is out there. You have to start with the belief that there is information about you which is out there and is accessible by somebody. There's been over 2 trillion, that's with a T, records stolen. In 2020, there were something like 36 billion. And data breaches are just out of your control. You have no control. If you're doing business with Yahoo, if you're using Yahoo for whatever, and they had a breach, there go 3 billion addresses, or eBay or Equifax. Just glance down the list. I would wager that everybody on this call uses one of those entities. Home Depot, Uber, Target, they've all been hacked. Doesn't mean they can't get hacked again. So I have to travel under the assumption that everything I do is out there. I told you about the internet of homes, smart homes. I've got a couple of Alexa products out and I use it to wake up. So Amazon knows what time I get up in the morning. It is out there, and you need to understand that everything you do is out there today. So I said we would talk about phishing and smishing when somebody poses as a rep from a legitimate institution and contacts you by email or text. Excuse me. And there's usually a problem or an enticement. So let's look at what some of these look like. Now, you know what American Express is. So I get an email that says it's from, let me just put on this annotate, if you bear with me 1 second so that I can highlight some things. I get an email that says it's from American Express, but it says the address says it's comes from a Columbia EDU. You don't think American Express has a logo they can put here? Surely they can get the last 4 digits of my account number somehow. That shouldn't be too hard. But listen, look at who it's addressed to recipients, even a plural. And if you look carefully, you'll see as requested, comma, you need to update your account information. No period, a comma, just bad. contact us immediately. No space. This was probably put together, I don't want to mention a foreign country, but I will, Pakistan or Malaysia or wherever. It can be any place in the world that this is coming from. But look at the obvious errors. And if we go to the next one, this is so obvious, it's terrible. There's no account number. Attend an event, click here to attend an, don't even say what kind of an event. Follow this activation link. Apologize is spelled wrong. We verify you 8, the authorized, you are the authorized. So they're just mistakes that a grade school kid wouldn't make. Charles Schwab, again, no logo from Schwab. Recipients, edu, dear valued customer, no punctuation, wrong word for a usually, I'd have to read the sentence. We've noticed a sign-in attempt from an unusual location, not a usual location. Click here to confirm. Well, that's the last thing you want to do is click here. And then they get so personal. They'll go on social media, figure out I know somebody, and they'll use that name. I've blanked the name because that's a real person. Is this really Elizabeth? Doesn't sound like her. And hello, where are you now? I have something urgent, need to help. You know, click here. And here you go, you have a problem. Now, voice phishing is similar, but they're doing it over the telephone. And you get a phone call from your area code. So you think it's somebody you might know, a neighbor or something. I'm sure you all get these. I've even gotten calls from my own phone number. But somebody calls and they claim to be from a legitimate institution, either the IRS or the Social Security system or Amazon. I have gotten, if I had to think about it, I've probably gotten 10 calls in the last 6 weeks saying a purchase has been made against your Amazon account for $1,200 for an iPhone. It will be registered tomorrow morning unless you punch 1 and talk to an agent. I was mistakenly hit 1 on a Social Security call that your account has been compromised. And do you know what the first question out of this person's mouth was? What is your Social Security number? Well, if they were to have known it was compromised, you think they would know the number that was compromised, or the IRS is coming to put you in jail. Well, let me tell you, if you get something if you get a phone call that says the IRS is calling or the Social Security system is calling and you have a problem and you have to solve the problem right now, it's a fraud. And if they ask you to pay, you have to catch up your payment with Social Security or Medicare, whatever, or IRS if you don't pay it right now, or you have an outstanding ticket, and if you don't pay it right now, and how would you pay it? You either transfer money electronically or go to the giant grocery store or someplace and buy a gift card and give them the number. Guaranteed that's a scam. If anybody asked you to pay by gift card, fraud, scam, period. Now there's species of phish. I know that sounds funny. Bulk phishing. They just send out emails to hundreds of thousands of people a day and see who they can get to click on a link to get information from. They can be more specific, spear phishing, criminal gathers information and targets an individual, and they get that information from all the places we talked about. Social media, all the places we talked about. Clone phishing, that's harder to spot. What they will do is go take a legitimate company. I got one a couple of weeks ago from a retirement community. And the retirement community suddenly is selling COVID test kits. And what they did was they stole the cover and put a different link in that you would click on, and they were selling COVID test kits for $100 a piece. And that would be harder to spot because it looks like it's a legitimate company. So be careful. Spear phishers get information from social media. What people put on social media always surprises me, like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Public records, real estate records, MBA, credit bureaus, and from data breaches. We already talked about trillions of records have been hacked. Skimmers have gotten very sophisticated. Well, what is a skim? What is a skimmer? A skimmer is a device that goes into a machine that you're putting a credit card in or a debit card, and it reads it and transmits that information to somebody probably sitting in a car around the corner. The thieves, if they're skilled, and they are skilled, can pop the cover of a gas pump and install a skimming device within about 30 seconds. And you have no clue that that's happened. They've been known to break into ATM machines and install a skimmer. Either break into the bank, the standalone place at the bank, or break into a machine and install a skimmer. Now, let's not assume that everyone has a skimmer. And let's also assume that you're safe because you also need a PIN number. And even though they may have a skimmer and read your card, they can't get in because they don't have a PIN number. They may have put a tiny little camera above the ATM machine. So even if it doesn't appear there's anything wrong, as a matter of safety and precaution, put your hand over the number when you're putting a PIN number in. And there are new ploys every day. We talked about IRS. You owe taxes. You're going to be arrested. SEC is involved. You're involved in a stock scam. I know you've all heard, this is Microsoft. Your program is going to stop working. Have you gotten something that says either an invoice is attached on an email, or the invoice for the item you ordered is attached or is going to be emailed to you, or we owe you money, click here so you can get your refund? And it's really hard to not think the charity is legitimate. There have been so many disasters, take Puerto Rico, or fires out west, or hurricanes in the south. But you need to understand that there are people who are not very scrupulous, who will take advantage of you, and the money goes right in their pocket. And if I got a deal for you, these 1,000 coins were only minted in 1901, and there are no more going to be minted, and on and on and on. What has been prevalent are COVID-19 cures and prevention, and now they're into back to work. You're going back to work, and they're making, we can make sure that your computer information is transferred, whatever it is. If they can think of some way that would entice you, they will figure it out. Tax preparations, we guarantee a refund. How can they guarantee a refund? And Social Security. I would be surprised if more than half of you have not gotten a call saying your account has been compromised and payments will stop. What do they do with the information? Well, they convince someone that they are you. Or they use information from you and other people to create a synthetic identity by aggregating information. They'll take a credit card number, they'll take a social security number and somebody else's name and somebody else's date of birth, and they're making Frankenstein. They're making a whole new person. And since there's no credit history on that person, somehow or other, they'll get a credit card. Maybe it's only going to be a $500 limit. So they'll pay that off for a couple of months and then ask to have it raised. Now it's $1,000. And they'll pay that off for a couple of months and get it up to $5,000. Blow all $5,000 and they're off and running, never come back. So they will do that with credit cards. They'll do that with leases. They'll try to buy a car. They'll get medical treatments on your insurance. They'll file for a tax return. They'll do anything that you can do if you have credit. So just don't give them what they want. Keep your social security number and personal information private. Now, I know you got to give that stuff to some people sometimes. There are applications, school registrations, leases, mortgages, where legitimate companies want that information. That doesn't mean that legitimate company can't be hacked. But if you don't need to give that information, don't give it. Almost all financial planners will tell you to use credit cards instead of debit cards. I got 2 adult daughters that are using debit cards. Debit cards can cost you money. Credit cards have a liability limit of $50. Debit cards, I checked this today. If you let the bank know immediately, they'll give you your money back. If you let them know within 48 hours, they'll charge you $50 and give the rest of your money back. If you were sleeping for 60 days, it's $500, and on 61 day, any amount of money that's been taken out of your debit account is gone. Credit cards do have a limited liability. So what I would do on a debit card or credit card, what I have done is I copy the front and the back on my copy machine. So I have the fronts and the backs, everything that's in my wallet. So were I to lose my wallet, I would know what's in it, who to call, what the numbers are, and whatever. My wife thought she lost her pocketbook at the mall and didn't even want to drive to MVA to replace a driver's license. So I drove up with a copy of what was in her wallet and said, okay, go drive. Take this with you. If you were to get stopped, at least you can show the policeman you have a valid license and it's been stolen or lost and you're going to replace it. If you purchase stuff online, make sure it's a secure link to a legitimate company. It ought to say HTTPS. The S stands for secure. That's what it's supposed to be. And if you want to contact a company, if something looks legitimate, call the company directly. Don't click on a link. All right, call the company, say, did you send this out? Do you need this information? And don't Google the name of the company. Find some other way. If you're doing business, you ought to have some really good way to know who you're calling, because thieves will put a fake number into Google and you'll Google the company, get a fake telephone number, call them, and you've caused yourself a problem. Don't post things on social media that reveal personal information. You know, you might even consider don't post uh, vacation pictures. You're just advertising you're not home. And don't put anything on there that you wouldn't want your mother to see, because whatever you put on social media is there forever. It's in a server someplace forever. Don't leave mail or personal information unsecured. If you know what time the mailman comes to your mailbox, go get it out of your mailbox. Unless you have a locked mailbox, anybody can take information out. And establish online accounts and use two-step authentication. So if I have an online account with the bank, I can check my account every day. If I'm using a mail bank statement, if we assume for a moment that I get it on the first of the month, every month, first of the month, I get my bank statement. That's great. But suppose somebody breaks into my account on the second day of the month. I virtually got a whole month to wait before I found out there was a problem. If I'm banking online, and the banks must think that's secure because every bank encourages you to bank online. Every credit card company encourages you to bank and use credit cards online. So you can check it 4 times a day, doesn't make any difference. And use two-step authentication where you can and want to. What is two-step authentication? I sign into the bank, I put in my ID and my password, and then they send my cell phone a 6-digit number, which I have to put in. So that's the second step. So even if somebody steals your password, they may not be able to get in unless they steal your phone at the same time. Microshred everything. Microshred. The old shredders that used to go straight line, people can put that information back together very quickly. Microshredders don't cost anymore. They're not very expensive. And they end up with tiny little pieces of paper that nobody can do anything with. Freeze your credit. Okay, that, if people aren't familiar with it, and sometimes they're not, that's really a bad nomenclature. Freeze your credit really means tell the credit bureaus, do not give anybody information unless you give them permission by unfreezing for a period of time, a day. You want to buy a car, you go in and talk to the dealer. The financial guy at the dealership says, I have to check your credit. And I tried to, I can't get any information. Well, if you were a thief, you can't get any information either. That's the whole point. But you can either online or call, and if you have the right password, unfreeze it. Financial guy gets the information he wants. The next day it goes back and it's frozen again. So the thief that has now gotten your number can't get any information. And check your credit reports. There's a phone number you can call, 877-322-8228, or www.annualcreditreport.com. And never give people information unless you initiated the call. If somebody calls you and says, I need your social security number, don't give it. Know whom you are communicating with. And, you know, if my brother called and I know my brother and I know he needs my number for something, okay, I know whom I'm communicating with. But the general rule is never give information unless you initiated the call. And never click on a link you're not sure about. That's worth saying again. Never click on a link you're not sure about. If you get caught, the thief is the bad guy, not you. We're all vulnerable. Bernie Madoff stole $15.2 million from Nobel Prize winner Elie Wiesel. So you can't say he's mentally slow. Elie Wiesel won a Nobel Prize, lost $15.2 million. Somebody can steal your tax return. You won't even know about it. They'll get the refund. You file a tax return and government says, somebody already got your money. And Social Security cards, if you're not using direct deposit and put directly into your account, but you're getting a check every month, somebody can lift it out of the mailbox and, well, it's a little late. 2 weeks go by before you really take a close look and figure out it's missing and have to call and try to undo a problem. So they're the bad guy. You're not the bad guy. Who do you call if something happens? I'm going to give you names of several people. There's a Federal Communications Commission. And there is a sheet which you ought to be able to get. I've emailed it to Dana, and she ought to be able to forward it to you with a lot of information on it. You can call the National Elder Fraud Hotline. And what do you expect when you call? This is true because, you know, I've checked all of these out to make sure that the information I'm giving is accurate. Somebody will respond quickly. You'll get a case manager, and they'll be treated with respect. And that's pretty neat. You can call the AARP Fraud Watch Network. Their phone number, 877-908-3360, or just Google Fraud Watch Network, AARP Fraud Watch Network. You don't have to be a member, but you can get tips on how to avoid cons and scams and identity theft. You can get warnings about new scams. It's a place to report a scam or a con. And they have a helpline where, you know, I don't know what to do, and somebody can help you. And you can sign up for a free bi-weekly email called Watchdog Alerts, which is a newsletter, comes out again bi-weekly. And there's stuff in there that you might find of interest to you. This is a really neat web page that is new. And if you just search out and put identitytheft.gov, you'll get this page come up. And there's all kinds of stuff in there. And you can, it says get started or browse recovery steps. So you can go either way. And you can just play with this thing. And they have all kinds of information there. And you can also go on AARP YouTube, AARP Maryland YouTube, and you'll find all of these titles that we have done short, half-hour or less YouTube recordings that are out there for you to see or go over the things we've talked about again here. And there's one more of those scheduled on the 18th. It's a conversation. Well, no, it's a presentation by Leisure Shefferell, who is a senior policy analyst with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Office of Older Americans. That's almost as long as the State Advisory Council on Quality Care at the End of Life. So, but she is a wonderful person and a wonderful resource, and it will be worth your while to hear her. So that's it. And I didn't stop for questions, but I will pause here. I'll stop here and answer any questions I can.
Thanks, Ted, for that presentation. If you have questions, you can start putting them in the chat. I actually want to bring us even closer to home and talk a little bit about what's going on in Montgomery County. So I want to introduce Tracy Rezvani, who's an administrator for the Montgomery County Office of Consumer Protection. Thanks for being with us, Tracy.
Hi, thank you for having me. Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if there was a Q&A. So to talk a little bit about our agency, we are soon to be celebrating our 50th anniversary of providing consumer protection in the county. And what our office does is a little unique for the area. Other than us, only Howard County has a consumer protection agency in the state of Maryland. And unlike some other consumer protection nonprofits, we do have law enforcement authority. So if folks file a complaint with our office, and we are a complaint-driven agency, and as we are trying to resolve the complaint, we're trying to determine if there's been a scam or a fraud, or if it's just, poor customer service. If we find that the law has been broken, we do have the ability to file citations or statement of charges and go the route of law enforcement as well. We also provide consumer protection through regulating certain industries. So whether it's auto repair, home builders, folks that are coming into your home to repair your refrigerator or your computers, those are folks that have to get our license. We also license as administratively for the police department for secondhand personal property dealers. So hopefully if you are buying secondhand goods, they do have our license as well. One other item that we do for folks is we do provide outreach and education. We try to put all of the scam alerts that Mr. Meyerson spoke of. I put 2 out a day, and I swear these criminals are getting more inventive every day and more outrageous, frankly. So folks can follow us on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram. They can see those alerts, and we have a whole library of webinars available on our YouTube channel. All of our social media goes under the name of Consumer Wise, so you can search for us in those platforms. So that is an overall arching discussion of what we do for folks in the county. And, I can go into a little bit about how folks might want to reach us, and I can put that in the chat box. Our website is www.montgomerycountymd.gov/consumer. And when you get there, we have links to our social media pages there. The complaint link is right there on the front page. And if you want to request us to come and provide presentations, either in person or virtually, under consumer services, you'll find a form, and I can put that in the chat box as well. And we can do our complaints and our outreach in not just English. We have provided services in many other languages. We've done outreach and education in Spanish and Korean and Chinese as well. And we can do complaint resolution in pretty much any language as long as we can find an interpreter to assist us. And I think there was a question posed to me earlier about what are the latest local scams that we're seeing. Pet scams have been huge. We've been seeing a lot of complaints against legitimate shipping companies whose names have been misused as the company that was shipping the beloved parakeet or the cat or the dog. So pet scams have been huge. They primarily are coming out of Cameroon and I think Romania, where non-existent pets are being sold online, and folks are paying these shipping companies that either don't exist or their names are being misused, and there is no pet and the money is gone. The other huge thing, and Mr. Meyerson touched about it, is how people are paying online and what that means. Using payment apps, especially going off platform on eBay. But even if you're buying anywhere else, whether it's Craigslist or a Facebook Marketplace, or even in a storefront that's on the website, if you're using payment apps, you're essentially using cash. There is very little protections, and even the protections that you find for debit cards may not be available if you're using these payment apps. especially if you're dealing with a scammer on the other end, because they take the money, they wire it out, and they're gone. And some of these apps don't need to be connected to a bank account. They just need to be connected to a card, and those cards could be stolen cards, or they could be those debit cards that you get at the grocery store. So scammers are ghosts. They can be completely disappear. And if you're using these payment apps online, you really shouldn't. Apps are peer-to-peer, friend-to-friend, people you know and know where to find if there is an issue. So those have been some of the more recent issues we've been seeing in the last year that we get a lot of complaints on as far as scams.
Tracy, can you clarify when you talk about payment apps, are you talking about things like PayPal and Venmo?
PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, exactly. Those peer-to-peer payment systems. Zelle is an interesting one because it is connected directly to your bank account. And if there is a breach, there is an even greater risk of losing your personally identifiable information. Whereas if if there's a breach at Cash App or something, maybe there's less information. You need to know, if you do use Cash App, there is no customer service phone number. A lot of scammers set up fake websites and fake phone numbers so that folks are calling the bad guys to get help on Cash App. And Venmo has a automatic setting where all of your transactions are posted socially out on social media. Which is how folks were able to find President Biden's Venmo by finding him easily online. So there's a lot of privacy issues, and as well as basically theft problems if you are dealing online with these payment apps.
Can you give some guidance around what people should be using if they want to make online payments?
Credit cards, and I think I wholeheartedly echo Mr. Meyerson's statement that credit cards are the safest bet. I know folks for fiscal responsibility prefer the debit cards, what we used to call check cards. Even before then, they used to just be ATM cards. But credit cards are your safest bet. Other than the additional protections through dispute mechanisms, some of your credit cards may offer insurance and other guarantees and warranties on purchases beyond what the product that you're buying may already have. So credit cards are your best bet online.
Thank you for that. I have one more question from the chat. Can you talk a little bit about your role, Tracy, on the ElderSafe AFC committee?
I'm actually on the Age-Friendly Montgomery Advisory Group. I sit in the Public Safety Task Force, along with the Office of Emergency Management, the police, and fire and rescue. And I've been invited to the AARP to provide a local flavor about the kind of work that we do here in the county, not only for seniors and older adults, but for consumers generally in and around Montgomery County.
Does anyone have a question they'd like to unmute themselves and ask of either Ted or Tracy?
One popped up, what can you do to stop email spam? I'll take a crack at that. Really, you want to make sure that you unsubscribe as much as you can. There are ways of going to the Direct Marketing Association and registering your email, but criminals and scammers aren't going to follow the law, so they're certainly not going to follow those lists. But if it's a legitimate spam, and then that's a crazy thing to say, but if you're just somehow got on a list and you're just getting insurance, unsubscribe.
Does a follow-up to that, does blocking an email address that's obviously a spam address help?
Not really, much like trying to block spam phone calls, or it doesn't, because email addresses are easy to spoof and easy to create. Same with phone numbers. So if you're blocking a phone number, that call isn't really coming from that number. It's coming from somewhere in Asia or the Caribbean or Chicago, which was they busted up a call center there. they can use the internet to fake the phone number they're calling from, and they can fake the email address as well. So blocking it doesn't really stop it. Unsubscribing and just deleting it and creating a more robust spam filter. And I've seen a lot of products out there that require authentication of the sender to verify that you're a person that should be sending this message and you want to be heard from. So there's products out there you can use.
I heard that unsubscribing is actually a way for them to get to confirm that your email address is legitimate.
And that's what I said is legitimate spam. Yes. And that's what I meant about legitimate spam. If you somehow, your email got sold, and for some reason, every now and again, I get sold and I get nothing but insurance quotes. So those you can unsubscribe from and it stops. The real risk is sometimes the unsubscribe link is the link that downloads viruses or malware.
Right.
So that's why I say, look, just delete it. Train your spam filter to move it to the spam box or the junk folder. The less you interact with the junk mail, the safer you are.
Spam filter.
If I can interject for a second, we're talking about debit cards. The bank will very gladly give you a second debit card, open up another account. And if you're using your debit account for getting money out of an ATM machine, and you get a second account and you just put, a few $100s in it or whatever small amount if you got hacked, you wouldn't be devastated by. That's a way to protect yourself if that's where you want to get cash when you need it. You don't have a lot of money in the account because people will be skimming or whatever on an ATM machine.
Wait, please don't do that right now.
Any other questions? Jean, I know you had a question about the unsubscribe. Did you have another one?
I'm so horrified by all this. I've been doing everything wrong. How do you train your spam filter? Because what I've been doing is I get so many emails, it's making me crazy. How do you train your spam filter to improve the filtering?
If you choose to not delete the spam, you can always mark it as junk. So depending on what email you use, you may right click on it, or you may have to click and then select some function, but you can mark it as junk, mark it as spam. Maybe if you drag and drop it into that folder. So it really depends on what platform you're using, but there's a way of teaching your browser or your platform to recognize spam better.
Okay, well, that's what I need to do. I get so much junk. I'm just horrified.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
You got your millennial daughter to
Oh,
help you
stop
out.
it. You have any more tips? Let me have them.
I love the family love going on right now.
Right. She's going to straighten me out, okay?
There is a question in the chat about, do you recommend just one specific credit card solely for online use? And that will probably be our last question from attendees, unfortunately.
I don't know how many credit card companies do this, but Capital One lets you get virtual numbers for everybody that you do business with. I use Capital One, and I must have 125 virtual numbers. And every time I do a transaction with Home Depot, that virtual number comes up and is then billed to me on my main number. But it's better than just using one card for all online transactions. Tracy, would you agree with that?
Yeah, virtual numbers are an interesting one, especially if it generates a new one every time. Then in theory, they can never hack your credit card again. I think whether you use one or several, I think the step one is to get off your debit cards when you're doing online shopping and use your credit cards. And then how you set it up, if it's the, one card or not, that's really going to be a function of how your life works. I've set up my email differently. So I send all of my shopping to one email and all of my medical to another one and all my personal family to a third. And that helps me separate things a little bit better too. So there's a lot of ways of organizing your consumerism, and you have to figure out what works best for you.
I can't believe it's 2 o'clock. I want to thank Tracy. I want to thank Ted. We will be sending resources to everyone after this call so that you have their contact information if you have any additional questions, if you think of anything else. Jen, we might need to talk about doing a second one of these. I think that there is additional information that we can get out to folks. I want to thank you all for your time with us this afternoon. Some of the key takeaways that I took, and I hope you got them and some others. There are over 2 trillion records that have been stolen in data breaches. We all need to review our emails and our letters carefully that we receive to make sure that we're thinking about the logos that companies are using, that email addresses match, that the information seems trustworthy before we take any responses. Along with that, take a moment before you respond. Things that can sound or seem urgent most often are not. So just take that time, breathe before you respond. Keep your personal information private, and never, 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 I want to repeat, never click on a link that you're not sure about. We're all about repetition here at Leadership Montgomery. We find it very useful. Once again, I want to thank Ted. I want to thank Tracy. I want to thank Jen. I want to thank all of you. We will be back for the 3rd part in the series with AARP on September 8th on 1 o'clock, focusing on mental health. I wish you all a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.